Hello, this is Trina, and I want to share a recipe with you today. It's a black-eyed peas recipe from Vegetarian Times magazine. I always tweak recipes to suit my taste, so I don't follow this recipe exactly. Anyways, let's begin. The recipe calls for 3 cups cooked or canned black-eyed peas. I used 2 cups of the dry peas. If you want to be more exact, probably 1.5 cups would be good because I did have some left over. I put these into a handheld colander and then I rinsed them very well with water. Next, I covered them with water. The water level is about 2 inches above the peas. Then I put them onto the stove and heated them until the water was boiling rapidly. Remember that saying about a watched pot never boiling? Proving now that this is not true. I like the look and sound of water beginning to boil. Cooking is such a great sensory activity. Once it is done boiling, you'll remove it from the heat and let it sit and soak for about 45 to 60 minutes. While the black-eyed peas are soaking, you can begin preparing the other elements of the dish. For my greens, I chose to use organic chard. I was going to use spinach, but they were all out of spinach at the store I went to. Red chard is nice though. Organic is great, but be sure to clean the leaves well. That's the thing about organic that I've noticed. It's just dirtier, and also there have been a few surprises on the leaves sometimes. I like to remove the leaf from the center part by using scissors. My mom would probably say to add the center, but I'm sort of a texture person and I don't like that tough texture. This would be a great cutting activity for kids with a pair of child-sized blunt and scissors. Get them helping out in the kitchen and improving their fine motor skills at the same time. Next, you'll be chopping up the leaves. They are going to shrink a bit once they are cooked. The recipe said 3 cups, but I ended up with 4 cups and decided to go ahead and use that much. I love my greens. Now you'll need a medium onion. After cutting off the ends and taking off the peel and that outer skin layer just under the peel that has a tough texture, I like to cut the onion in half and lay the straight edge of one of the halves on the chopping board to finish slicing and then chopping up my onion. Doing this helps to limit the risk of injury due to the onion rolling while slicing it. I like onions in food, but if someone didn't like them, they could be omitted from the recipe or perhaps cut more finely. This can help with texture issues. If it is a taste thing, though, just leave them out of the recipe. Put your onions into a small bowl. Next, you are going to need to chop 3 scallions according to the directions, but I put in 5 since they are small and I really like scallions, also called green onions. I cut off the rooty ends and any wilted green part ends. Then I chop up all those into small pieces and add them to the bowl with the other onions. For the 2 stalks of celery, I removed the leafy parts and that tough part right where those leafy parts began. I keep the smaller parts of the stalk just above this. This is my preference. I'm sure you could just chop it all up and add it to the mix. I slice each stalk lengthwise on the board first so that my celery strips are thin. Then I hold the strips together and chop them about 1/4 inch from the edge and continue until they are all small pieces. Again, this is a preference thing. I am not a big fan of the stringy fibers inside of celery, but I have found that if I chop them up small enough, I won't notice the strings at all. Put the celery in the bowl with the onions. Very pretty. The recipe says to heat 2 tablespoons of oil, but where I think that I can, I always try to cut back on the amount of oil I use. So I only used 1 tablespoon of oil in my nonstick pan. You'll heat this over medium heat. I usually heat it at a higher level initially, and then when I add my veggies, I turn down the heat to medium. Okay, so add your veggies and begin sauteing them. Stir them around in the pan until the onions begin to look clear and a little bit golden. Should take about 10 minutes. I love this sizzling sound too. Add a cup of water and let it simmer for 10 more minutes, stirring frequently. This recipe calls for a sprig of cilantro. I pinched out a small bunch and used what I pulled out. Cilantro is one of those herbs that you can adjust to your taste. If this recipe had garlic in it, I'm telling you I would definitely double the amount of garlic. So you'll want to pull off the leaves and discard the stems. This is another task that your children could help with, and it would work on their fine motor pinch skills as well. I had my daughter helping in the kitchen since she was still in diapers. Here she is helping knead bread. Anyhow, once all those leaves are pulled off, just chop them up a bit and set them aside. Get your 2 tomatoes, slice one in half. Cut out the top part of the tomato where the stem used to be. Does that have a name? Anyhow, I used 2 angular slices on either side of the stem area. Then lay the straight edge of the tomato on the chopping board and slice it. Chop across the slices to make small chunks. Our mix of onions and celery is looking good. Now it's time to add the greens, cilantro, and tomato. Cook this for 10 minutes, stirring often. Stir in 1 teaspoon of salt. The recipe says coarse salt, but I like my sea salt, so that's what I used. After 10 minutes, remove the pan from the heat. My black-eyed peas are done soaking, so I remove them from the stove and take them over to the sink area. I drain off all the water. Then I add more water to just above the peas, about 2 inches again. I remove some of the floating black-eyed pea skins. You don't have to do this. It's a texture and an appearance thing for me. Bring the peas in water to a boil. Put on the lid and let it simmer on low heat until soft for about an hour. Make sure you taste more than 1 or 2 peas when you think that they are done, because sometimes some cook well and others are still a little hard. I think I should have left mine on for another 15 to 20 minutes. You'll need 3 cups of the cooked black-eyed peas and 3 to 4 tablespoons of water. Add this to your mix in the frying pan. Stir together and simmer for 10 more minutes to combine the flavors. Once it's done, cool a little and then eat it while warm. Okay, so I'm going to try some of what I made. Put it on a fork and into my mouth. It's good.